The stranger in the elevator at midnight. I've lived in this apartment building for over 2 years now. It's a 19-story structure tucked between a small river and a tree-covered hillside. People around here call it Moonlight Residence, a poetic name, sure. But to me, there's always been something off about it. Maybe it's the long, narrow corridors dimly lit with flickering yellow lights. Maybe it's the way sounds seem to echo even when no one's around. Or maybe it's just something you start to notice when you live alone and come home late almost every night. See, I work in design, long hours, tight deadlines. Staying at the office past 11 p.m. is pretty common, which also means I usually take the elevator alone. At that hour, the whole building feels like it's holding its breath. And then, one Friday night, something happened that I've never been able to forget. It was a little past midnight when I left the office. The streets were quiet, unusually quiet. No cars, no people. Just the sound of my own footsteps and the occasional rustle of wind brushing against the high rises. I reached the front entrance of the building. The motion sensor lights in the lobby flickered on faintly, not fully awake, not quite asleep. The place had this strange hush to it, like a forgotten chapel. I walked toward the elevator and pressed the button. The digital display lit up. The elevator was coming down slowly, but floor 15, 14, 13, and then it paused. For several long seconds it just stayed on 12. That was odd. Who would be using the elevator this late? Eventually the numbers started moving again. Each to 11, 10, all the way down to the ground floor. Ding. The doors slid open. It was empty. I stepped in, a slight chill brushing past me from inside. I pressed 17, my floor, but just as the doors were beginning to close, I saw her, a woman, walking toward the elevator. Slowly. Silently. She wore a long black dress. Her hair was dark and loose, falling over most of her face. I could barely see her eyes under the glow of the dim hallway light. Without thinking, I reached out and held the door for her. She stepped in, not saying a word. There was something about her. Not threatening, not aggressive. Just still. She didn't make eye contact, didn't nod, didn't even glance at me. She just stood there, a few feet away, eyes down, hair covering half her face. I gave her a small nod, a polite gesture. She didn't respond. Odd, but okay, maybe she was just having a rough night. We've all been, there. Except, she didn't press any buttons. If you've ever lived in a high-rise, you'd know that that's weird. If you get into an elevator and don't press a floor, where are you going? Still, the elevator began to rise. Second floor. Third. Fourth. I sneaked a look at her. She hadn't moved an inch. No bags, no phone, no purse. Just standing, head down. We reached the 9th floor. Ding. The elevator stopped. Neither of us had pressed anything. The doors opened to a pitch-dark hallway. Lights flickered weakly, like they were struggling to stay alive. No one there. The woman didn't move. I looked out, feeling a sudden draft and cold and sharp, as if the hallway had exhaled into the elevator. The kind of cold that doesn't feel natural. The doors shut. 10th floor. 11th. I was starting to feel uneasy. 3rd floor. The elevator stopped again, but this time it didn't open. No chime, no reason. Just silence, and then the lights in the elevator blinked once and went out completely. We were in darkness. I instinctively pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. I pointed it toward the woman. She wasn't there. The corner where she'd been standing was now empty. There were no footsteps, no sound, nothing. I slowly turned the light behind me. Nothing. To the left, nothing. And then, right next to my ear, I heard a whisper. The 13th floor is where I left. I spun around. No one. Suddenly the lights came back on. The doors opened. We were still on the 13th floor. I slammed the close door button, my fingers shaking. The door shut, and the elevator finally started moving again. And 15, 16, at last, tick, 17. I bolted out without looking back. I didn't wait to see if she followed. I didn't care. I just ran straight to my door, locked it, and stood there, heart pounding. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I went downstairs and spoke to the security guard. When I told him what happened, he didn't even look surprised. He just let out a slow breath and said, "You're the third person this month to mention a woman in a black dress riding the elevator past midnight." I stared at him, waiting for more. He hesitated a moment, then continued. "Used to be a tenant on the 13th floor. Young woman, lived alone. People say she took her own life in her apartment years ago. Wore black often, hair always down, never talked much. They say sometimes she still comes back." I left the security booth in a daze. Since then, I've never used the elevator past 11 p.m, and if I do, I make sure I'm alone. If someone steps in and doesn't press a floor, I get off. No questions, no waiting, just get off. Maybe you live in a tall building too. Maybe you ride the elevator late at night. Just be aware. Sometimes the ones who don't speak, the ones who stand too still, the ones who never press a button, they're not going anywhere because maybe they never left. The attic room with the ever-burning light. Some houses look peaceful on the outside, places you'd imagine to be quiet and safe. But sometimes, behind those calm walls, there are stories that defy explanation. I used to think that way, until I moved into an old house at the end of a small lane just outside the city. Part 1, first steps inside. The house was over 70 years old, faded paint, a roof with weathered tiles, and walls that had seen decades pass by. I rented it from an elderly woman who had lived there her entire life. She warned me about one thing. I asked what it was, and she smiled softly, nodding toward the attic. "There's a light up there," she said. "That attic light. It never goes out, no matter if it's day or night, even during power cuts. We've never been able to turn it off." At the time, I thought she was joking, or maybe just a little superstitious with age. But that story would soon become something I couldn't forget. Part 2, the first night and the strange. Glow on my first night in the house, everything seemed normal, until I decided to go up to the attic to store some old boxes. The attic was spacious, with a small window looking out into the backyard. As I climbed the creaky stairs, a soft glow trickled down, like a gentle oil lamp lighting the way. Not too bright, but enough to illuminate the old steps. I was sure I'd turned off all the lights downstairs. And it was a pitch-black night with frequent power outages during the rainy season. I opened the attic door to find the ceiling light shining warmly, bathing the dusty corners in golden light. What shocked me was that there was no one there, and no visible power source, no switch, no wires, nothing that could explain the light staying on. I tried turning it off. No matter how hard I tried, the light stayed on. Part 3, the following nights and the whispered reading. In the nights that followed, I began hearing faint sounds from the attic. Not footsteps, not doors creaking, not the wind blowing, but the soft sound of someone reading. A gentle, calm voice reading quietly, just loud enough to lull me towards sleep. I'd lie in bed, listening, comforted by the sound of a voice reading words I couldn't quite catch. I tried going upstairs to find the source, but no one was there, just dusty shelves filled with old books I hadn't looked through yet. I wondered if maybe it was the spirit of someone who once loved this room. Part 4. Old photographs and forgotten secrets. One day, while cleaning the attic, I found a small wooden box filled with old black and white photos. In them was a young woman with a gentle smile, standing in that very attic room, next to a bookshelf just like the one I had. I showed the pictures to the landlady. She told me it was her daughter who had passed away over 50 years ago when she was very young. She loved reading, the woman said softly. She used to spend hours up in the attic, studying and reading. The landlady believed her daughter's spirit still lingered here, holding on to this room she loved so dearly. Part 5. Communicating with the spirit. From then on, I paid more attention. Whenever I went upstairs, the light would glow even brighter, sometimes flickering gently, as if someone was controlling it. I tried speaking to her, and the sound of reading would grow clearer, as if responding to me. One night I brought a book I thought she might have read. I opened it and began reading aloud. The attic light glowed softly, then slowly dimmed as I stopped reading. Another time, when I forgot the book, the light dimmed and the reading stopped altogether. Part 6. Stories from the attic. Over time I stopped, feeling scared. Instead I felt comforted, like an unseen friend was there, silently watching over me, sharing little stories from long ago. Some nights it felt like we were reading together, flipping through pages of forgotten tales and dusty old books. I learned to respect that space, treating it like a sacred corner where memories never fade. Part 7. Peaceful closure. Even now when I tell this story, I can't explain the mystery of that ever-burning light, but I don't question it anymore. The attic room, with its gentle glow, has become part of my life. It reminds me that some things don't need explanation, just feeling and a quiet heart. And sometimes spirits who have long gone still linger in the corners of a place they loved, making sure they are never forgotten. The laundromat that never closes. You've lived in this city for nearly 3 years now, and there's one thing that's always caught my attention, though no one else seems to notice. Just around the corner from my apartment, there's a small, run-down laundromat. No signboard, No opening hours posted, no customers. But the lights inside are always on. The first time I noticed, it was one rainy night. I was walking home after a late shift, close to 2 a.m. The entire block was dark and quiet, except for the soft hum of rain against the pavement. And yet, that laundromat was glowing brightly. Through the foggy glass, I could see the machines spinning, clothes tumbling over and over like someone had just loaded them. But inside, there was no one. I figured maybe the owner had forgotten to turn things off. But it happened again the next night, and the night after that. Week after week, that laundromat kept glowing through the dark. Always lit, always running, always empty. Finally asked the old lady who ran the convenience store across the street. I said, "Hey, do you know when that laundromat closes? I always see it open really late." She stared at me for a few seconds, then said quietly, "That place, it's been closed for years." I blinked. "But the lights are on. The machines." She shook her head, didn't say a word, just shut her store door. She never spoke to me again. One night, curiosity got the best of me. I slowed down as I passed the laundromat, peering inside. That's when I saw it. Under the bright, fluorescent light, a figure was standing in front of one of the machines. Still, slender, head slightly bowed, motionless. I froze. Whoever it was didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there, watching the washers spin. I quickly walked away, didn't dare look back. From that night on, I avoided that stretch of sidewalk altogether. Until one rainy evening, I took a wrong turn while rushing home without an umbrella, and found myself right in front of it again. Same lights, same machine spinning, same figure. But this time, the figure turned to face me. I stopped breathing in the pale, humming light. I saw a woman, hair long and dark, covering half her face. Skin deathly white, almost powdery. Eyes black, sunken, and staring straight at me. I ran, didn't look back. I couldn't sleep for days. When I told my friends, they laughed it off, said I was overworked, probably hallucinating. One of them hung, challenged me to go back, saying he'd come too, just to prove it was nothing. We went around 1 a.m, lights were on, machines still spinning, no one inside. Hung laughed. "See, just some faulty old machines. Chill out." I wanted to believe him, but then I noticed something. Through the glass, inside the spinning washer, there was something like a white shirt, soaked in blood. It turned and turned and turned. Hung didn't notice. He pulled out his phone and said he was going to live stream a ghost hunt. That's when the lights inside flickered and went out. Total darkness. A soft click followed. The laundromat door creaked open on its own. A cold draft drifted out, thick with the smell of old water and rust, and then footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging. Coming from inside, I grabbed Hung's arm, tried to pull him, but he was frozen. Eyes wide, mouth open. No sound. I turned toward the glass and saw her, the woman, right behind it, face pressed to the window. "Staring!" I screamed. Dragged, hung and ran until we couldn't breathe. He never spoke about it again, but he changed. He stopped sleeping, barely talked, just stared out his window. Night after night. Once I visited him and found him sitting on the floor, whispering. She's still washing it. It's not clean yet. Not clean. A week later, Hung disappeared. I went to his apartment. The door was open. No sign of him, but in the corner there was a basin filled with soaking wet. Clothes red sticky and the smell, blood. Long strands of hair floated on top, black, tangled, unmistakably human. I called the police. They searched, but never found him. When I told them about the laundromat, they frowned. That place, one officer said, hasn't been in operation for nearly 10 years. It's boarded up. I stared at him speechless, because I knew. If I walked past that corner again tonight, the lights would still be on, the washer would still be spinning, and somewhere inside, that woman would still be standing there, washing something that never seems to come clean. Number I never thought a simple phone call on a cold, rainy night could change the way I see the world, and the way I understand death. My name is Hian. I'm just an ordinary girl living a quiet life in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Nothing special about my job. I work customer service at a call center. If anything, I hear too many phone calls in a day to be affected by one more. So when my phone rang that night, I didn't think much of it. At least not at first. That evening it had been raining heavily. A slow, steady kind of rain that tapped gently on the tin roof above me. Most of the neighbours in my row of rentals had left town for the holidays, and the entire block was unusually quiet. I was curled up on my bed with a cup of hot ginger tea, soft music playing, and a book in my lap. It was the perfect night to unwind, and then my phone rang. I glanced at it lazily, assuming it was another spam call, but then I saw the number. It wasn't saved in my contacts, but the area code caught my eye. It was familiar. Very familiar. It was from my old hometown, where I had lived for years with my parents before moving to the city for college and work. I hadn't received a single call from that area code in years. Curious, I hesitated for a second, then answered. Hello? Silence, not static, not bad reception, just complete. Still silence. I was about to hang up when I heard it. A soft breath, like someone was holding the phone close, but trying not to be heard. Hian. My heart froze. That voice. It wasn't distorted or garbled, just soft, hollow, like it was echoing from deep inside a well. But it wasn't the sound of the voice that shook me. It was the way it said my name. Only one person ever said my name like that. My aunt, Hang. She was my mum's younger sister, a kind, gentle woman who had loved me like her own child when I was growing up. But she had passed away almost 2 years ago. She was in a motorbike accident late one rainy night, just like this one. I stared at the screen. The number was 0368894, my aunt's old landline number. But that line had been disconnected after her funeral. I didn't know how long I sat there frozen. The call long ended. I checked again and tried calling back. No answer. A robotic voice responded. The number you have dialed does not exist. I told myself it was probably a prank, a scam, someone spoofing old numbers with an app. But 3 nights later, the number called again, same time. Just before midnight this time I didn't answer. I just stared at it ringing, and then a message came through. Dee's white cat is still in the back garden." My stomach dropped. Only Aunt Hang and I knew about her white cat. She'd had it for years. After her death, the cat vanished. No one in the family ever saw it again. No one should know that. The next morning, I packed a small bag and returned to my aunt's old home. It had been locked up since her passing. No one had moved in, and over time the place had become overgrown and dusty. A silent little time capsule of her life. I stepped into the backyard, carefully parting the tall grass. The rain had left everything wet and heavy. I called gently for the cat, more out of instinct than hope. Then under the old jackfruit tree at the back, I saw it. A bundle of old blankets, and inside something moved. Thin, frail, white. It was her cat, still alive. Dirty, hungry, and much older now, but those eyes, I recognized them instantly. She meowed once, softly, and rubbed her face against my hand. I broke down in tears. That night, I stayed at Aunt Hang's house, cleaned up the living room, lit a stick of incense and placed a bowl of rice on the altar, just like old times. The cat curled up beside me, purring as if nothing had changed. Around 2 a.m., I was woken by a sound. Not my cell phone this time. It was the landline. The old phone in the living room. I didn't even remember plugging it in. Shaking, I walked out and picked up the receiver. Ian. Same voice. But this time it was clearer. Calm. Even familiar. "I didn't get a chance to tell you. The second drawer in the bedroom. Under the silk cloth, I left something important there for you. I wanted to say something, anything, but the line had gone silent. I ran to the bedroom, opened the second drawer, pulled away the faded purple silk, and there it was. An old envelope, yellowed at the edges. Inside was a savings book, and a handwritten letter. It read, "Dear Hyan, if anything ever happens to me, I hope this can help you start something new. Don't worry about me, I'll always be close." Her handwriting, her words. I sat on the floor and cried. The next day, I took the cat to a vet, then contacted the rest of the family. No one believed me at first until they saw the letter, the savings account. Silence. Nods and tears. I didn't keep all the money, just enough for a small new beginning. The rest I donated to a local charity in my aunt's name. Since then, I haven't received any more calls from that number, but sometimes, on rainy nights, when the wind brushes against my window like a whisper, I still feel her presence, not scary, not heavy, just there, like a quiet promise. Have you ever believed that some phone calls connect more than just two people? That maybe, just maybe, they reach across time, across death, across everything we think we know. I don't need anyone else to believe it. I lived it, and I'll never forget. The voice that called to me one last time. The old dormitory and the mirrorless bathroom. When I was a freshman at university, I was assigned to an old dormitory on campus, a place that carried the weight of time in its peeling paint and creaky floors. and the whispers of something more unsettling. The dorm building, known simply as Block C, had been around for nearly 6 decades. It had that heavy, silent atmosphere of a place that had seen too much. The hallways were long and dimly lit. The windows had rusted bars, and the floor tiles were worn smooth by generations of students who'd walked them before me. But the strangest thing about Block C, and something I didn't notice right away, was the bathroom on the 3rd floor. It didn't have a mirror. At first, I thought nothing of it. My room, C312, was near the far end of the 3rd floor. It was small, just enough space for 2 bunk beds, 4 desks and a ceiling fan that groaned when it turned. I shared the room with 3 other freshmen. We were all new to this place, all a little nervous, all pretending we weren't. It was one night in early September when I first noticed the missing mirror. I'd gone into the bathroom late to brush my teeth, and without thinking I looked up, expecting to see my own reflection above the sink. But there was nothing, just a bare patch of wall, a little rough, a little stained, like something had once been mounted there and then torn away. I mentioned it to one of the senior girls the next day. "Hey, why isn't there a mirror in the bathroom on the 3rd floor?" She paused, just for a second. Then she said, casually, "Oh, it broke. People kept smashing it. You don't really need one, right? Just use your phone." Her answer didn't sit right with me. The more I paid attention, the stranger it became. There were 3 bathrooms on our floor. None of them had mirrors. All had the same rough wall above the sink, with faint outlines where mirrors must have once hung. I'd seen the bathrooms on the 1st and 2nd floor. They were normal, clean, with mirrors, but the 3rd floor, it felt watched. Especially late at night. One night I stayed up late studying for a test. It was past 2 a.m. and the dorm was quiet. The kind of silence that presses in on your ears. My roommates were all asleep. The lights in the hallway were dimmed, except for a dull emergency bulb flickering at the far end. I stepped out of the room to splash water on my face. As I passed the bathroom, I noticed the door slightly ajar. I was certain we had closed it earlier. Curious, I leaned in. There was no one inside, but I heard the sound of dripping water. Steady, slow. I pushed the door open. The bathroom was dim, the air thick with moisture, and the faint smell of chlorine. My footsteps echoed off the tile. I walked to the sink, turned the tap, and bent down to splash my face. And as I straightened up, out of habit, I looked up, expecting to see my reflection, but of course there was no mirror. Still, I felt it, that creeping, unmistakable feeling that someone was standing right behind me. Watching, I spun around. No one. The next morning, I told Lynn, one of my roommates. She went pale. "I've been hearing things too," she whispered. "Late at night, like someone talking in there. But when I check, it's empty." Over the next week, we both started noticing small, strange things. A towel falling from a hook, even though no one had touched it. The faucet dripping even after. We turned it off tightly, a shadow flitting across the corner of your eye. It was always the same place, the 3rd floor bathroom, and always at night. Eventually we started asking around, quietly, carefully, and piece by piece. The story came out about 10 years ago. There was a student who lived on the 3rd floor, a quiet girl, kept to herself. Her roommate said she had a strange habit of staring into the bathroom mirror at night for long periods, sometimes for hours. One night, she went to the bathroom around 3 a.m. She never came back to bed. They found her collapsed on the bathroom floor, right in front of the mirror. Her eyes wide open, mouth moving, but no sound came out. She fell into a coma and never woke up. After that, things began happening. Other girls said they saw handprints appear in the mirror, small and pale, even when no one had touched the glass. Some claimed that when they looked into the mirror, their reflection didn't move in sync, that it was delayed, like it was watching, waiting. The school removed the mirrors shortly after. All of them, from every bathroom on the 3rd floor. I tried to avoid that bathroom after midnight, but one night I had no choice. I'd been studying at the library and came back late. It was raining. The hallway was dim and echoing with the soft patter of water outside. I passed by the bathroom, and the door was open again, just slightly. Inside, a faint light glowed. I stepped closer, and then I heard it. Voice. A soft female voice, barely more than a whisper. She looks in the mirror. She smiles. She cries. I froze. The voice was coming from inside, from the empty bathroom. I took a step forward, instinctively, raised my hand to push the door open wider, but before I could slam the door shut, hard, I jumped back. My heart was thudding, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't check inside. I turned and ran. After that night, Lynn and I asked to be moved to a different floor. We were lucky. A room had just opened up on the 2nd floor. Things felt calmer there, quieter. But I never stopped thinking about the bathroom upstairs, about what or who might still be standing on the other side of that blank wall, watching, reflecting, mimicking. Sometimes I wonder, what do we really see when we look into a mirror? Is it just our own face staring back? Or is there something else hiding behind the glass, wearing our expression, pretending to be us, waiting for a moment to step through? The last gas station on Highway 13, I've never been the superstitious type. I believe in reason, logic, things you can explain, or at least I used to. That was before the night I found myself driving down Highway 13, chasing a delivery. Deadline and trying to stay awake with bad coffee and late-night radio static. It was supposed to be a simple delivery, just a run from the city to a tiny town called Grey Hollow, population who knows what, a couple of 100 kilometers away. I left the office late, sometime after 9 p.m., thinking I'd be there by midnight and home before sunrise. I didn't realize that by the end of that night, something inside me would change forever. The long road, the highway was empty. Just my headlights cutting through the dark, the occasional road sign, and the hum of tires on asphalt, my GPS cut out about an hour in. No signal, it said, and it never came back. Even my phone bars dropped to 0. Still, I was on the right road, a straight shot, no turns. I was sure of that. The gas gauge dipped below a quarter. I kept checking the dashboard like it might magically reset itself, but it didn't. The fuel light came on. I started to panic a little. There wasn't another car in sight. No towns, no side roads, just trees and darkness. Then, like a lifeline, I saw it. Last gas station, 500 menti ahead. I breathed out a nervous laugh and sat up straighter. The empty station, the gas station, appeared like a ghost out of the night. Dim yellow lights buzzed above the old pumps. A tiny convenience store sat off to one side, windows fogged, a flickering, neon open sign barely clinging to life. There were no cars, no people, no movement. Still the pumps were lit. I pulled in and got out, my boots crunching on cracked concrete. I looked around, called out, "Hello?" No answer. I peeked through the convenience store glass. Inside, the shelves were dusty, half empty. There was a cash register on the counter. A tiny old radio behind it crackled with static. I pushed the door open. It gave way with a dry creak. No Clark, just the faint hum of a dying light and the quiet ticking of a clock that seemed to have stopped long ago. I hesitated, then went back out to pump the gas. The nozzle was stiff, the handle cold and greasy. Still it worked. I filled the tank, walked back inside, left cash on the counter, a full $20 with a scribbled note. Pump 2, paid cash, nobody here. I started to turn and leave, and then I saw it. The mirror behind the register was a large wall mirror. Its wooden frame was chipped and worn. The glass had that cloudy, antique kind of haze, like it hadn't been cleaned in decades. But something about it. I looked into the mirror, expecting to see myself. But I wasn't there. I could see the store, the dusty shelves, the empty counter, the dirty floor. But not me. I blinked and stepped closer. Still nothing, just the store, as if I were already gone, and then someone appeared in the reflection. A woman? She stepped into view from the back room. Long black hair, an old-fashioned dress that looked like something out of the 1950s. She moved slowly, placing her hands on the counter, mouthing something. Her lips moved, but there was no sound. She didn't seem to see me, or maybe she was looking right through me. I stumbled back. When I looked again, the mirror was empty. Voices in the trees. I hurried outside, heart pounding. The wind had picked up. The tree line behind the station rustled like something was moving through it. Then I heard it. "Help! Please! Someone!" A woman's voice, barely above a whisper. I froze. The voice sounded weak, scared. Like it came from deep inside the woods. I shined my phone's flashlight toward the trees. The beam caught nothing but branches and shadow. Still I stepped forward. "Hello?" The wind moaned through the leaves. My breath came out in pale white clouds. And then, from behind one of the trees, I saw a face. Pale, expressionless, eyes wide open. I blinked. Gone. I ran. The stranger on the road back in my car, I locked the doors and peeled out of the lot. The station disappeared in my rearview mirror like it had never been there. My hands gripped the wheel tight. I told myself I was imagining things. Then, not 5 minutes down the road, someone appeared in my headlights. I slammed on the brakes. A man stood in the middle of the road, clothes torn and dirty, face streaked with mud. He didn't flinch, just stood there blinking against the light. I rolled my window down halfway. "You okay?" I asked. His voice was hoarse. "You got room in there?" I hesitated. He looked worn out. Desperate. Not dangerous. Something about him felt lost. Nodded. He climbed in. For a while, we just drove in silence. Then he said, "Did you see that gas station?" "Yeah," I said, my eyes still on the road. He shifted. "I've been stuck out here for hours. I stopped there earlier today. Thought I'd get help. But nobody was there. No cars. No signal. I walked down the road and somehow ended up back at the same place." I glanced at him. "You didn't see the mirror, did you?" His face went pale. "There's a mirror?" 6. A buried past. When we reached Grey Hollow, I bought us both coffee at a late-night diner. The heat helped, but the cold from that place still clung to me. We were sitting quietly when the old woman at the counter, maybe in her 60s, walked over. "You boys all right?" she asked. We nodded. Then she looked at me closely. "You said you came in from Highway 13. I nodded again. She lowered her voice. "Don't know if anyone told you, but that gas station's been shut down since the late 90s. There was a fire. The woman who owned it, used to live in the back, vanished. They searched for her, thought she ran off. Then years later, some kids broke in and found..." She paused. "They found her bones behind the mirror in the office wall. Tied up, hidden. Like someone didn't want her to be found." I felt the blood drain from my face. She kept talking. "They say she was trying to signal people that her spirit still lingers, looking for someone who'll finally listen." The man next to me sat the hitchhiker, pulled something from his coat pocket. It was a note. My note. Pump 2, paid cash. Nobody here. It was clean, not a speck of dirt, like it had never been touched by time. Home again. I don't drive that highway anymore. In fact, I avoid that whole part of the state. But sometimes, late at night, I still dream of that station. I see the dim lights, the cracked pavement, the dusty shelves, and the mirror. Always the mirror. Sometimes I see her, the woman, looking right at me. And sometimes I hear the voice in the woods. Please, help me. If you ever find yourself on Highway 13 and you see an old sign that says, "Last gas station, 500 min," think twice before stopping. And if you do, bring cash. Don't stay too long. And whatever you do, don't look too long in the mirror. The village library and the nameless borrower. Some places, no matter how long you live there, hold secrets that only the keenest eyes can notice. The small library in my village was one of those places. Quiet, unassuming, and yet filled with mysteries that logic couldn't explain. My name is Lynn. After graduating from university, I decided to return to my hometown and take up the job of the village librarian. At first, I thought it would be simple and peaceful, just the right pace to settle in and keep in touch with the people around me. The library sat at the far end of the village road, beside an old basketball court where children had played for generations. It was an old wooden building, the paint faded and peeling, with towering shelves filled to the brim with books covered in dust and smelling of aged paper. Some of those books were so old the pages were fragile, almost translucent, and you could almost feel the memories of previous readers etched into every word. From the very first days I realized this library was unlike any I'd been to in the city. There was something deeply calm, almost hushed about it. Each afternoon, as the weak golden sunlight filtered through the windows, the air seemed to wrap itself in a soft, hazy veil. Gentle, quiet, and still. The only sounds were the turning of pages and sometimes the rustle of leaves outside. Then one day, something strange began. One weekend evening, while checking the borrowing log, I noticed an odd entry. Borrower, nameless. Book, borrowed. Untold stories of the village. I looked at the book. An old, worn volume missing its cover, filled with legends and ghost stories from around the village. At first, I thought it was a mistake or maybe someone using a fake name. But week after week, this nameless borrower kept checking out different books, always ones about mysteries, always leaving no contact details behind. I was curious, but also a little uneasy. Why would someone borrow books without giving their name? And why only books about the unknown, the hidden stories no one dared to speak about? One night I decided to stay late at the library, hoping to catch a glimpse of this mysterious visitor. By then, I was the only one left in the building, and darkness had settled everywhere. Around 11 o'clock, the library door creaked open gently. A figure stepped inside, tall and thin, wearing a pale grey long coat and a wide-brimmed hat. I hid behind a bookshelf, heart pounding, trying to stay quiet. Without a word, the visitor moved silently to the oldest shelf, pulled out a book, and placed it on the librarian's desk, before leaving as quietly as they'd come, without giving me a chance to ask a single question. The next morning I checked the borrowed book. To my surprise, on the inside cover, in black ink, was a small note for those brave enough to seek the truth. From that moment on, the visitor came regularly, never speaking, always borrowing books about ghost stories, ancient legends, and unexplainable phenomena. Their presence pulled me deeper into the village's stories. I began reading those books at night. Tales of the abandoned house on the hill, the ancient banyan tree villagers believed was a gateway to another world, and the shadowy figures only seen during full moons. I felt a strange, magnetic pull, both eerie and tender. Like those stories were not just tales, but whispers of a land's forgotten soul. Then one night, while reading a story about a woman who vanished by the river, the library suddenly went dark. The lights cut out entirely. In the darkness, I heard soft footsteps circling the shelves, the sound of pages flipping, but no one was there. I stood up, fumbling for my phone's light. The screen flickered on, then off again. The cold silence was so thick I could hear my own breath. Suddenly, a whisper echoed softly, coming from the depths of the old books. Do not fear. The truth awaits you. I looked around, but no one was in sight. Heart racing, I cautiously touched the open book on the desk. The words on the page seemed to shift and move, as if telling their story just for me. From that night, On, I no longer saw the library as an ordinary place. The nameless borrower was not a living person. They were the spirit of a historian who had died many years ago, still haunted by secrets left untold. Each book they borrowed was a fragment of memory, stories no one dared reveal, truths too dangerous to speak aloud. I decided to write down those stories as a bridge between past and present, so those lonely spirits could finally rest. Sometimes, late at night, I still sense that figure silently walking past the shelves, smiling at me. A quiet reminder. Do not stop. Keep searching. And I, Lynn, the village librarian, continue to care for these old books, listening to the stories whispered through each worn page, flowing through the endless river of time. The never-drying painting. I still remember the exact day I stumbled upon that painting, the painting that changed everything for me. Back then, I was a young artist, just starting out, wandering through the narrow streets around a little flea market where old things lingered like whispers from the past. I've always loved antiques, not just for their worn beauty, but because every crack and faded color seemed to tell a story. And that painting, it called out to me. Day one, the encounter, I stepped into a dusty little shop, dimly lit, filled with the smell of old paper and wood. In the far corner, hanging on the wall, was a canvas, an oil painting of a young woman standing under the moonlight. Her face was wistful, touched by a quiet sadness, and her eyes seemed to look right through me. What caught my attention wasn't just her gaze, it was something else. The paint was never dry. No matter how old the painting was, the surface was still soft, almost damp to the touch. When I lightly brushed my fingers over it, the colors smudged ever so slightly as if the painting were alive. Curious, I asked the shopkeeper about it. The old man nodded slowly, his eyes shadowed with a secret. He said the painting had been there for decades, made by an unknown artist many years ago. Every time he tried to clean it, the colors would bleed and blur, like the paint wanted to escape. I couldn't stop staring. Finally, without fully understanding why, I decided to buy it. There was something about that painting, a connection I couldn't explain. Day 2. The mysterious paint back in my small studio. I hung the painting on the wall and studied it under the warm yellow light. Every time I touched the surface, a cold shiver ran through me, as if the painting breathed, as if it held a secret that whispered just beyond reach. I tried to restore some faded areas, hoping to make it look fresh and whole again. But the moment my brush touched the canvas, the paint melted and spread out like a living thing, blurring edges and distorting shapes. That night, I dreamed of the girl in the painting. She stood under the moonlight, silent, her eyes full of longing and sorrow. She never spoke, only watched. Day 7. Dreams take shape. Each night the dreams grew clearer. The girl showed me scenes without words. A lonely old house, abandoned and forgotten. The painting was more than art. It was a mirror, holding her soul captive. I woke up, heavy-hearted. My pulse quickened. feeling her sadness seep into my own skin. And when I looked at the painting in the morning, the colours seemed to shift with her mood. I realized then the painting wasn't just a picture. It was a story of love, loss, and loneliness trapped in oil and canvas. Day 15. Whispering in the dark one night while painting beside the canvas, the studio filled with silence, broken only by the soft scrape of my brush. Then I heard it, a faint whisper. Was it the wind? Or her voice? It was a quiet call. Her name, barely audible, carried on the still air. I turned to the painting, and her eyes seemed to meet mine directly, filled with a desperate longing, a plea for remembrance. I couldn't ignore her. Day 21, searching for the past. Determined to uncover the truth, I dug through archives and spoke with antique dealers. I learned that the artist had painted the portrait for the woman he loved, a girl who mysteriously vanished during a violent storm years ago. The artist died poor and broken-hearted, leaving behind this painting as his only tribute to her memory. I decided to visit the village where the story began, hoping to find answers and perhaps peace. Day 28, the old house and the moonlight in the quiet village. I found the old house she once called home. The first night there, soft footsteps echoed through the halls, and whispers floated through the dark. Moonlight poured in through the window, casting a gentle blue glow, surreal and dreamlike. I unfolded the painting and noticed the colours melting into the moon's light, as if the painting and the night were becoming one. Day 35. Meeting her again one evening, as I gazed out the window, she appeared, a faint silhouette, delicate and sad. The girl from the painting stood before me, real yet ethereal. No words passed between us. Our eyes spoke of pain, hope, and understanding. She thanked me for remembering her, for setting her free. The painting no longer needed to hold her spirit. Day 40. Farewell. The next morning I noticed something remarkable. The paint was finally dry. The colours were fixed, stable, no longer shifting or smudging. She never came to my dreams again. I knew then she was free. The painting was no longer a vessel for a trapped soul, but a masterpiece, a beautiful, finished work. I placed it in my studio, honoured and cherished it, and shared her story, a reminder of love's power and the enduring memory of those we never forget. And so, the tale of the never-drying painting became more than a ghost story. It became a testament to the quiet strength of a soul waiting to be seen, to be remembered, and finally, to be free. Each night, there are nights when the world outside is so quiet that you can hear your own breath, the soft rustle of leaves, or the faint hum of distant cars. But sometimes that quiet feels heavier, almost as if the silence itself is watching you. I remember those nights clearly. I had just moved into a small old house on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place that felt like a retreat from the chaos of city life. Worn wooden floors, creaking walls, and a garden just big enough to hold a few wildflowers. It seemed perfect for finding a little peace. The first day was filled with cleaning and setting up. I made tea and sat by the window, watching the sun set over the fields, painting the sky with warm shades of orange and pink. But when night came, everything changed. At exactly 3 a.m, I woke to a soft knocking at the front door. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was faint but steady. Sitting up, I listened closely. The bedroom was at the back of the house, far from the front door. I hadn't heard anyone come in. My heart beat faster, but I told myself it was probably just a passerby, maybe someone who got lost or confused about the time. I got up, tiptoed to the door, and peeked out. No one was there. Just the thick darkness and the whispering wind playing with the leaves. I shut the door firmly and tried to calm my racing heart. The second night, the knocking returned. This time, it was louder, more urgent, like someone tapping their fingers impatiently on the wood. I didn't dare open the door. Instead, I stayed frozen, listening as the knocking echoed not only at the front door, but also by the garden gate, the kitchen door, and even the door to the living room. Each knock felt closer, stronger, like something or someone was getting nearer. By the third night, I was no longer trying to sleep through it. I closed all the windows, pulled the blankets tight around my ears, but the knocking followed me everywhere. It wasn't just on the outside doors anymore. I heard it coming from inside the house. The walls, the floorboards, even the stairs. Each knock was like a heartbeat, slow and steady at first, then pounding faster and louder. I curled up on the bed and whispered to myself, "Why me? Why here?" And then I made up my mind I wasn't going to ignore it anymore. The next day, I prepared. I grabbed a flashlight, my phone, and a sturdy walking stick, just in case. I set an alarm for 2:45 a.m. and got ready to face whatever was on the other side of that door. At exactly 3, the knocking started again. Knock, knock, knock. I breathed deeply and opened the bedroom door, slowly making my way toward the front of the house. I switched on the flashlight and pointed it out into the darkness. There was no one there, only shadows, the cold night air, and the whispering wind. I stepped outside, shining the light around, checking every corner. Still nothing but silence. Night 4 was different. The knocking didn't just stay at the door. It moved from the gate to the porch, to the living room, then the hallway outside my bedroom. It was like someone was walking through the house, knocking on every door in turn. I stood frozen, listening to each rap, my heart tightening with each sound. By night 5, I decided to record it. I left my phone on in the living room, turned on the voice recorder, and hid under the blankets. At 3, the knocking came, louder and more urgent than ever. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, I caught something else. A soft, tired sigh, like an old man, weary and lonely. My skin crawled. Curious and a bit desperate, I researched the house's history. I learned that about 30 years ago, an elderly man had lived there, He died under mysterious circumstances, alone, with no family nearby. Neighbors whispered about strange noises, especially knocking, heard late at night by the people who lived there after him. On night 6, I decided to speak to whoever was knocking. I set a small table near my bedroom door, placed a cup of tea on it, and whispered, "If you're here, please knock 3 times. Silence. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Then clear as day. Knock. Knock. Knock." My heart almost burst. In the following nights, I began a strange kind of conversation. The knocking changed rhythm, as if trying to communicate, sometimes soft like a lullaby, other times fast like a warning. Then one night, the knocking came right to my door. I opened it, but no one was there. On the wall, scratch marks formed a message, slowly appearing as if etched by invisible fingers. "Thank you for listening." A warm calmness washed over me, replacing the fear with peace. From then on, the knocking stopped. But the memory lingered, a haunting reminder that sometimes the quietest voices just want to be heard. So if you ever hear knocking at night, don't be afraid. It might just be a lonely soul looking for someone to listen. And if you open your heart, maybe you'll find peace too. That opens for 1 hour a week. There are moments in life, simple, unassuming moments, that carry a gentle kind of mystery. This is one of those stories. I work night shifts at a small hospital on the outskirts of the city. The job is demanding and leaves me little free time. But it also gives me a chance to observe the quiet, lonely beauty of the night. For me, night isn't just for sleeping. It's a time to listen closely to the soft sounds around me, to see what daylight hides. One Friday night, after a long, exhausting shift, I decided to take a walk around the small neighborhood near my home. The rain had just stopped, and the air was fresh and cool. The streets were empty, lit only by the faint glow of street lamps reflecting off the wet pavement. As I walked, something caught my eye, a tiny bakery tucked between 2 tall buildings. It looked old, with a faded wooden sign and slightly foggy glass windows, but what made it truly strange was that it only seemed to open for a very short time, at exactly 1 a.m. every Saturday morning. At first I didn't pay much attention. The few times I passed by, the bakery was always shut tight. But this night, a faint light glowed from inside, and I saw an older woman busily arranging trays of freshly baked goods. Curious, I stopped and watched. It was as if the shop lived by its own rules, completely unaware of normal business hours or holidays. It opened just for 1 hour, then closed again, like a secret known only to a few. I stepped inside, surprised that the door made no sound as it opened, and that I was the only customer besides the woman. She looked up at me with a gentle smile, her eyes warm but tinged with sadness. "How can I help you?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I noticed the bakery opens at 1 a.m. and I was curious to try some of your pastries, I replied, still a little hesitant. She invited me to sit down and brought me a small, delicate pastry on a plate. The sweet aroma filled the tiny room. "This is a recipe my mother used to make," she said quietly. "She's been gone for a long time, but I keep baking every week at this hour to remember her." I took a bite. The pastry was sweet, but light, tender, and comforting, just like the story she was telling. We talked more after that. She shared memories of her mother, the little kitchen where she learned to bake as a child. She told me that every week, exactly at 1 a.m. on Saturday, she opens the bakery, almost like a ritual she can't break. I don't know if anyone else will ever come, she said softly. But maybe it's just so the memories don't fade away. My heart warmed. In a noisy, fast-paced world, here was a place, a small, fleeting moment in time, where love and memory lived on through simple pastries. In the weeks that followed, I came back. Every time, she welcomed me with a smile, offered me a pastry, and told me stories, like old friends reunited. Then one night, I arrived and the bakery was closed, as if nothing had ever happened. I stood outside, looking through the window, when I noticed a small note slipped under the door. I picked it up and read, "Thank you for coming. The bakery will close forever after this week, but the pastries and memories will always live in my heart." I didn't know what to say. A bittersweet feeling spread through me. I realized then the bakery wasn't just a place to buy sweets. It was a sanctuary where memories, love, and peaceful moments were carefully preserved. I want to share this story with you, a gentle reminder. Cherish your memories no matter how small or ordinary. They are precious gems that help us slow down, look deep within our hearts, and feel the warmth in the simplest things. If you ever get the chance, find a place like that bakery, a place where time seems to pause and all you need to do is listen, feel, and let your soul rest.